if you don't get our weekly emails, the one this week would be a fun place to start. Down at the bottom of the introductory little reading, you'll find a link to T.S. Eliot reading his own poem, The Journey of the Magi. Now, this is probably Eliot's most beloved poem. And what I love about listening to Eliot read it is that he doesn't come off nearly as stuffy as Americans come off when they try to read it as if they were English. It's a narrative poem, and he's telling a story. It's about the Magi, and it kind of takes the romance out of it in the sense of acknowledging that it wasn't easy. A cold coming we had of it. Just the worst time of the year for a journey, and such a long journey. The ways deep and the weather sharp, the very dead of winter. The camels galled, sore-footed, refractory, lying down in the melting snow. There were times we regretted the summer palaces on slopes, the terraces, and the silken girls bringing sherbet. Then the camel men cursing and grumbling and running away and wanting their liquor and women, and the night fires going out, and the lack of shelters, and the cities hostile and the towns unfriendly, and the villages dirty and charging high prices. A hard time we had of it. In the end, we preferred to travel all night, sleeping in snatches, with the voices singing in our ears, saying that this was all folly. That's the opening bit, sort of the first stanza. These guys who made this journey, they're probably Babylonian astrologers. We don't know for sure, but just looking back at what we do know of the world at that time, and we know that all peoples paid attention to the movements in the heavens, but especially the Babylonians were one people who paid a lot of attention. The Babylonians were ancient enemies of the people of Israel. They had enslaved them at one point. They had conquered them and carried their best away. Babylonians had been the dominating world empire at one time, and they had the cruelty and the arrogance to make that happen. But something happened here. Something happened, and these guys, with all their servants and all that would have been necessary to make this journey, they make this long, crazy journey. And they're thinking in the back of their minds, hey, we saw the sign. I hope it's real. And all the people back home are saying, what happened to them? Really? You're going to do that over that? How did this come about? How did this happen? The best guess is that way back, during that time when the Babylonians had hauled the best and the brightest of the people of Israel over to their place, the best guess is that they learned of the prophecy in the book of Numbers from those best and brightest of the learned young Jewish men. This is the way the game worked in the ancient Near East. The ancient Near East was a brutal world. Might makes right. So you conquer a people, you get the best and the brightest of them, you bring them back, and you have them teach you everything they know, because that might catch you up on some technologies, but also you get them to teach you everything they know about the gods, because you're all convinced, except the Jews, who are the nuts because they only believe in one God. Everybody else believes there's, literally hundreds, if not thousands of gods, and there's a God for every category of life. And so the one thing you don't want to do if you're the czar tyrant dude is you don't want to overlook some God. Because if you overlook some God, then that God will become jealous, and he'll start meddling with your wonderful plans to rule the world. And it's hard enough already to get people in line, so you don't want the gods messing with you too. So you go ahead and try to learn about them so you can offer some expedient little sacrifice to them and placate them. And so this is what happens. So they bring over Nebuchadnezzar brings over Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Daniel, and they say, teach me. And in Numbers chapter 24, I will see him, the Messiah King, I will see him, but not now. I will behold him, but not near. There will come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel. So most likely, again, we don't know for sure, but just most likely, this is how this played out. It played out from that time. So when they see this thing go up in the sky, they go, aha, it's time. Let's go. Let's do it. Get this. That means that God was writing this into history way back in the exile. The God who does Romans 8 stuff, the God who works good in the midst of evil, was, even as the horror of exile and all that had taken place was happening, he is nonetheless writing hope into history even in that moment. In Galatians chapter 4, verse 4, Paul tells us that when the time was right, God sent his son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law. A part of the time being right was God had these pieces that he had to write into place as the craziness of the world went on and people didn't realize he was doing these things in the midst of that. But as amazing as that is, that ancient Near Eastern crazy geopolitics would be a way that testifies to Jesus coming among us, the glory that God has done, as crazy as that is, there's a step even better. God didn't only write this into history, he wrote it into the cosmos itself. The best way, again, none of this is provable. I'm just going to stop disclaiming, okay, just know. None of this is provable, but this is the best way to work this story out with the way the cultures of the ancient Near East were, okay? So just know that now. Well, stop disclaiming it. It muddles up the storytelling. All right? God wrote it in the cosmos itself because it was a comet, not a star. It's the same word in Greek. It's a thing in the planets. They don't have telescopes. It's a thing in the heavens. It works brilliantly as a comet. Comets can do all kinds of different things. I mean, what's the most head-spinning thing about astronomy? It's that there's no fixed point, right? There are variables in every way. I tried to be a physics major as an undergrad. I liked math. Somehow or other, as a freshman, I placed into Calculus 3, and I killed it. And I got to Calculus 4, and it killed me. And the reason it killed me, I could work the integrals. I could work crazy hard integrals. They're puzzles. They were just puzzles for me. But I couldn't set the limits right when we got into 3 variable integrals. I never set the limits right. So I worked the equation right, but if you have the wrong limits, you get the wrong answer. It's not what you're trying to do, right? Well, that's the challenge of astronomy. You've got all kinds of variables and all kinds of things happen, and some comets come, on short terms, Halley's Comet, and people know about them. Some comets only come on who knows how long. Some comets might pass the Earth we don't even know ever have passed in the past. All kinds of things are possible. Some comets come by and we don't see them without a telescope. Some come and we do. Some comets come by and people swear it's the end of the world, and in cities all over the world they go out and they tremble. This has happened in history. Some comets go and then they circle around in a way that they disappear and then they come back. God wrote this into the cosmos in such a way that that comet was simply doing what it was already doing. Does that give God more or less glory for not making a star specially poof and then go away? Who votes for more? I vote for more. I vote for more. It also means that the cosmos itself is telling the story. Okay? Does that make sense? It works like this. Peter told us that Jesus was foreknown from before the foundation of the world. Peter says Jesus was foreknown from before the foundation of the world. God wrote this into the cosmos. So they see this thing. They go on this trip. They're headed towards where the Jews are from because they know that much. They get to Jerusalem. Why do they bother with Herod in the first place? If the thing can stand above the house in Bethlehem, why do they bother with Herod? They know the way these games are played in the ancient Near East. They know that it's dangerous to go talk to Herod because the comet has disappeared for a while. And now they're going on faith. And now they're saying to themselves, oh dear, maybe we are crazy. So they get to Jerusalem, and Jerusalem's all in a thither because they've all seen it too. And they go and they say, hey, can you help us out here? Give us some more detail. So they say, sure, go to Bethlehem. And they think, really? That little place? You gotta be kidding me. But okay. So then they say, all right, we'll head towards Bethlehem. And then what happens? They come out, and the star is there again. And they rejoice exceedingly with great joy because they go, we're not crazy. It is there. It is real. It's come back on the screen, and it's more specific. Comets have the possibility of coming at us in a way that is like a scepter. And in Babylonian culture, they were actually called a scepter, where instead of going by in the sky, they look like they're coming down towards the earth, like a light scepter that a king would hold. How does a star sit over a home enough for you to sort out which one it is? But a comet can go, it's right here, guys. It can happen that way. It gets even a little bit better, and then we'll move on to what's it all about. There is a moment in the relevant history. There are all these programs you can go on in astronomy, and you can go back and say, what did the sky look like on X or Y day? And you can go back, and there is a day that works when Virgo, the Virgin, who has 12 stars in her crown, is seated with the sun watching, as it were, over the moon. And if there were a comet, and if that comet did what it could easily have done and passed through her as if a baby being born, then basically what happens is Revelation 12:1 is being acted out as story in the heavens. Revelation 12:1, a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. What's great about taking it this way is, first of all, it's the most reasonable for the world of that day. There are early Christians who assumed it was a comet. They just assumed that. They didn't feel like they had to argue it. They just comment on its having been this kind of thing because that's the most natural way for them to read the story. But it also means that this suddenly becomes not just a marker, but a story itself. And that story is picked up in Revelation 12. So, okay, I'll say it one more time. Maybe it didn't happen that way. Maybe it didn't. We can't know for sure. I don't think there'll ever be a knockdown proof one way or the other. I find it absolutely fantastically fascinating and wonderful. And that's what my little bit of money is on. But we'll leave that. They come and they bring 3 gifts. They bring gold and frankincense and myrrh. And even as they come because of a prophetic message, their gifts are themselves prescient and prophetic. They bring gold. Gold is what is brought to a king. Gold is given to a king. They come and they proclaim in giving gold. They proclaim in even showing up that this is the great king. And they come because they are tired of a world that is brutal, where might makes right, and they want a world that is ordered in a different way. And they come, and in their coming, in people's coming from another people, another nation, another king, another set of gods, in their coming is the hint sown that in Jesus there will be a new world in which peoples of all race, all tribe, all nations, all languages will be together worshiping the one true king, and there will be a different day. And Herod was right to be nervous because he is subverted. And Caesar is subverted. Where does this come to us? Where does gold come to us today? Friends, the main problem, the most significant problem with Christian nationalism is it makes Jesus smaller. It makes Jesus smaller. In the pagan world, every people have their own God. And gods are reduced to being the gods of those people. This is the moment where that ends. This is the moment where there is a God who transcends all of that, and that game is over. God had made the Israelites his chosen people, but in a different way. He had made them his chosen people for the sake of all the world, and that's clear in all the Old Testament. They were to welcome the sojourner and the alien among them so that those people could be early fruit representing the many different peoples, all the different peoples of the world coming in. What do you notice if somebody says, I am a Christian nationalist? What do you notice about that? Which one is the adjective and which one is the noun? What do adjectives do? Adjectives qualify nouns. What are nouns? Nouns is the what I am. It makes Jesus smaller. It says, I am nationalist first, and a Christian one is the kind I am. And Jesus doesn't play that game. Jesus comes to us and he says, if you will follow me, you have to die to yourself, lose all your other identities, take my identity on yourself as your fundamental, deepest identity of all. They bring gold. This is amazing. It's amazing in the ancient world that they bring gold. They bring frankincense. Frankincense is the stuff that priests use. When we use incense up here, or when we're outdoors, when we use incense, there's frankincense in it. Still today, frankincense features in incense. The stuff of priest means it's the presence of God. Jesus is the presence of God. There's a wonderful bit. Here's something nerdy literary that you don't need to know, but it's fun. T.S. Eliot, basically, his most popular poem, he basically took from a Lancelot Andrewes sermon preached to King James in Whitehall on this passage. He basically took the core of some of that and reworked it a teeny weeny bit and blomped it into his poem, and everybody thinks he made it up, but he didn't. This guy named Lancelot Andrewes, who is the prissiest, snootiest English person you'd ever want to meet, a Jacobite of Jacobites, the King James Bible. He was part of translating the King James Bible into being. And in King James, you have the restoration of the monarchy. And so all the Church of England priests were required to sign off on these official things about I will behave and I will follow you, King. So here's Lancelot Andrewes on Christmas Day preaching on this passage in front of King James in that moment in Whitehall, the palace. And he comes to the place where they worship him. And he looks at the king. You ready for this? And he says, let us see you fall down. They fell down. Let us see you fall down. Because to be with Jesus is to be in the presence of God. And every king is relativized by that. I read this, I was stunned. I didn't expect to see, from him of all people. I mean, he was so the expedient. He played the game so well. I just want to go back in history and I want to just ask him, did you just finally get so annoyed with it all that you just had to say it? Or what? Like what happened in that moment? Maybe it's just the Holy Spirit. And the third gift is myrrh. Myrrh is used for embalming dead bodies. How does this king bring about a new world that isn't about might makes right, but has a different order by which it functions? Only by his giving of himself. Only by being the beginning of self-giving love. He is the beginning of the self-giving love, the sacrifice that breaks in and makes a new world. Our challenge, friends, is how to get this reality of this one to be both our deepest identity and to be the identity we default to when either times are really, really good and we're having all so much fun, or when times are really, really hard and we're really, really stressed. Does that make sense? So I love to bicycle. I started bicycling way back when I was 16 or 15 or 14, I don't know, way back in North Carolina. I was a kid growing up in the country, and I was bored and I wanted to get out of the house, and I love bicycling because I can go anywhere I want to go. I can go as far as I go. It's up to me. As long as I can do it, right? So there's a sense of freedom for a young teenage dude. You know, you're on the road, and if I can push it, if my legs can do it, I can go. So I got started bicycling. So I started getting these bicycling magazines about Greg LeMond and the Tour de France and all this stuff. And so I got those cages for my pedals. And everybody I knew was like, "You're crazy, you're gonna get killed. You know, your foot's gonna get stuck." And I'm like, "No, it's not hard actually. You just pull your foot straight out and up, straight out and up." And I played soccer, so I'm used to using my feet. So I was never scared. I've never been scared in cages. Well, with some of my COVID money a couple years ago, I decided for the first time ever to get a proper road bike. I decided I'm going to get a proper road bike. So I got a proper road bike. And I thought, if I'm going to have a proper road bike, then I need to move from cages to clips. Now, if you're not a biker, what that means is instead of a cage that comes over your foot, there's a little clip on the bottom, and you buy the special nifty shoes. And then when you go around on the North Shore, everybody thinks you're really cool. And it has this little thing, and you, instead of going in from the back, you come in from the side, and they go click, click, and you're clicked in, all right? I've been riding with cages for 40 years. So guess what? When I start really having fun, I'm coming down through Manchester by the sea one day, and I'm thinking, I'll stop and get a mocha, and I'll put it in my water bottle, and I'll go along. So I'm going along in front of this cafe, and I'm looking to see if they're open. And I come to the point where my bike naturally stops. And what happens? I had the sense to at least hold my head this way and brace my shoulder, so I fell on my shoulder and didn't get hurt. And everybody around's got to be like, what is wrong with this dude? He just rolled to a stop in front of the coffee shop and fell over. And I fall over still attached to my bike because I'm too relaxed to consciously remember to do my feet this way instead of this way, right? And then I have another day where I'm going along, and I come to this curve, and I'm not going all that fast, and the person's not going that fast, but this dude with his yard truck comes along, and he must have been new at driving it. Anyway, he gets really close, and it's uncomfortable. And so I did something not totally in character. I start yelling at him, and finally I start yelling cuss words at him. And I mean, hey. So, and then he gets by, and I go, and then the trailer comes. Now, if I had had cages on, I would have just bailed out and rolled over on the grass. And that would have scratched my bike up, and I would have been fine. And he was going super slow. The worst thing that's going to happen to him is I'm thinking, I'm going to break my ankle. I'm thinking he's going to hit me, and I realize I'm not going to get my foot out. Because when I'm having a whole lot of fun, he didn't hit me, or when I'm really stressed, I've got 40 years of doing a cage thing instead of the clip thing, right? So I want to follow Jesus. I want to live the way of self-giving love. But I've got X number of years of when I hit fight or flight, or when I'm really having fun, I don't have the time or the space to get conscious about how would Jesus react to this. Does that make sense? Anybody else have this problem? Oh, come on now. Right? How do I get this to displace the things I have learned for so many years? The visceral responses, How do I get this way of Jesus so that I am in the presence of God, so that it's visible that he is my king? How do I get all this to be who I am all the time? There's no single one answer to that. The good news is God is patient. God is merciful. God is forgiving. He keeps working with us. You know, the curb I would have hit on my bike is not going to work with me. No second chance with it. Right? It's going to be whatever physics says it's going to be. God's not physics. God is love. And he's going to work with us. So there's no one way. But that's what we're doing. We're learning to get this way of Jesus to be both our deepest identity and our all the time identity. And that starts then with, let us see you fall down. Let us see you fall down. King of your own life, let us see you fall down. King of the little world you've made here or there, let us see you fall down. The third stanza in T.S. Eliot's poem, they go, in the second stanza they find the manger and so on, they describe it. Third stanza, all this was a long time ago, they say later. I remember, and I would do it again, but set down this. Were we led all that way for birth or death? There was a birth, certainly. We had evidence and no doubt. I had seen birth and death, but I thought they were different. This birth was hard and bitter agony for us, like death, our death. We returned to our places, these kingdoms, but no longer at ease here in the old dispensation with an alien people clutching their gods. I should be glad of another death. Friends, we fall down. We fall down to say, you, Jesus, are the King. We fall down at the manger of Jesus. We fall down at the mercy of Jesus. We fall down at the words of Jesus. We fall down at the feet of Jesus, at the cross of Jesus, at the empty tomb of Jesus. And we fall down at the throne of the living, shining, reigning Jesus, the Christ, the King. So Michael's going to come up, play a little bit. I invite you, if you're able, to kneel. If you're able and inclined, you don't have to do that. I invite you in your own heart and mind to fall down with the Magi before our Lord Jesus.